thank you very much for coming to the marathonian session today. So it's meant to run between 1 and 4, and we can discuss now how are we going to split the amount of things I have to tell you within this time. You're very far. Would you go like get a little bit closer? Otherwise, I can try myself to move, but anyway, just if you want, even after the break, if you want to get a bit closer, otherwise you can get far. I don't know. Right, I'll introduce myself. I qualified as a vet in Spain many years ago. I worked as a general practitioner in Spain. By the way, we don't have nurses in Spain, or we did not have them when I was there. And then I came to the UK to specialise as a cardiologist. So I did a residency training at the Big Vet. I worked for a year at the vet school in Liverpool as a clinician teacher. Then I came back to Scotland and after doing some mobile cardiology referrals, I came back to the vet school and that's where I spent most of my time teaching final year students, working on the hospital, and also lecturing undergraduate students. So you can guess that I might have gathered a fair amount of experience that hopefully might make this subject of cardiology for you a bit more appealing, I hope. Right, so just to go through the learning objectives, what I would like you to be able to achieve by the end of these cardiology sessions will be to, first of all, have some sort of an understanding or be able to describe how the heart works and what happens when it goes wrong and in which ways it can go wrong. I would like you to be able to identify which diagnostic tools we have to diagnose when there is cardiac disease, and also to be able to identify which ones are some specialist tools that we use for cardiology, like for example ECGs. I will introduce you to the ECGs, and hopefully you should be able to at least recognize some basic abnormalities on an ECG, and be able to understand how to record an ECG. Yeah, let's leave it there. I will also go through what are the type of drugs that we use for treating cardiac disease. And hopefully we should be able to get you to be able to list these cardiac drugs and just briefly mention how they work. And then we will hopefully you will be able to compare what are the differences between cardiac presentations, patients that present with a cardiac problem, if it's a dog and if it's a cat. And finally, perhaps you might be able to summarize what is the role of a nurse with cardiology itself. In order to fulfill these learning objectives, this is what we're going to do today. So first of all, I will give you a refresher on cardiac physiology, very, very mild, very brief. Then we will talk about what's the pathophysiology of congestive heart failure. And then we will go into how do you diagnose congestive heart failure, which are your diagnostic tools. This is meant to occupy the first hour of the sessions. And then by then, if I have not fried your brain completely, you should be able to have a coffee, have a break, 15-minute break, and then come back. And then we will move and talk about ECGs. ECGs is quite heavy, not because there is a lot, but it's because it's new. It's new to you, and it's very difficult to just be able to understand all the ECGs just by talking about them for like 40 minutes. So that's why it's better we have a coffee on board or a tea on board at that point. Then we will have another break, and the last session, which probably will be like 3:15 to 4 or something like that, we will talk about treatment of congestive heart failure. We discuss different presentations in dogs and cats, and then we will just go through what's the role of the nurses in all that. Ready? There we go. So cardiac physiology in a very simple way. So I probably should start saying that the heart is a very important organ. It does a lot of things. It can produce hormones. It can secrete hormones. I mean, it pumps. When you start at the beginning, probably it's easier to think of the heart like a pump. just a pump. So if you think of the vessels, yeah, and just remember that veins are the vessels that come to the heart, and arteries are the vessels that come out of the heart. You can think of the heart like just a pump that makes the blood move in one direction, forward, 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 yeah? And then you might think that there are two circuits. One circuit will be the one that starts from the left side, and the other one will be the one that starts from the right side. If you think of the heart itself, you're talking about 4 chambers, the 2 at the top, the 2 at the bottom. The 2 chambers at the top are the receiving chambers. They receive the blood from the veins, whereas the ones at the bottom are the pumping chambers. They pump the blood out of the heart, yeah? There we go. The left side of the heart, yeah, I'm upside down, so anyway. So the left side of the heart receives the oxygenated blood from the lungs through the pulmonary veins, and this blood goes into the left atrium. From this left atrium, the blood moves to the left ventricle, and it goes crossing the mitral or bicuspid valve, yeah? So the valves are just in charge of making sure the blood goes only in one direction, yeah? So from the lungs, the red blood cells take all the oxygen, put it on the backpack, go into the left atrium, they pass the mitral valve, left ventricle, and then the left ventricle pumps the blood out of the aorta, yeah? And again, the aorta has got the semilunar valves, the aortic valves, that just open and close. And what makes these valves open and close is just the pressures on each side, yeah? So that's the left-sided circuit. Now, the aorta has to bring this oxygenated blood to the whole of the body. Therefore, it has to be strong. That's why the walls are quite thickened, yeah? Because it has to produce a pressure on systole of 120 millimeters mercury, and the vessels will maintain the pressure at 80 millimeters mercury during diastole. This is when you go to the pharmacy to get your blood pressure measured, and they say, you're all right, you're 120 over 80. These numbers, this is what they are. It's the pressures that the heart and the vessels are producing on the left side of the heart, right? So as I say, the left side is the strongest, the left ventricle is the strongest chamber. That's why it's so thick. What happens in I mentioned already systole and diastole, yeah? So if we apply that on the left ventricle, the systole will be when the heart is pumping. The diastole will refer when the chamber is filling it with blood, yeah? There we go. If we now move into the right side of the heart, this is a bit different. What is filling in the right atrium are the cranial and the caudal vena cava. Yeah, in people there is a little different nomenclature because of the superior, etc. But for dogs and cats, we take the cranial and caudal, but it's the same. The cranial and the caudal vena cava are taking all the blood that has been used by the organs, bring it to the right atrium. From the right atrium, moves into the right ventricle, passing through the tricuspid valve, and then the right ventricle will pump this blood through the pulmonary artery into the lungs. So these red blood cells that carry all the CO2 will be able in the lungs to get rid of the CO2 and put the O2 into their backpacks, yeah? So what the right ventricle is doing, it only has to pump to the lungs. That's why it doesn't need to make 120 millimeters mercury. It can get away with just like 20 millimeters mercury. That's why the right-sided chambers are smaller. They're not meant to generate that much pressure. There we go. So the valves, as I said, they are there just to make sure that the blood moves in one direction, forward. There are some muscle in there. Other ones is more endothelial tissue. And I already mentioned the mitral valve, separating the left atrium and the left ventricle, the tricuspid valve, separating the right atrium from the right ventricle, the aortic valve from the aorta, and the pulmonary artery also has another valve. The valves are different. The mitral and the tricuspid valve are structurally different than the aortic and the pulmonary artery. Ones are called semilunar because of the shape they have, but probably that's not important to you. For you, the key message is valves are there to ensure the blood moves only in one direction. So that's the heart working well. What happens when the heart doesn't work well? So what is cardiac failure? So the heart failure, what happens there is that the heart is unable to meet the demands of the body. Yeah. So there is enough blood to work well, so that is, there is an adequate preload. I will be introducing these words all throughout the lecture. So the preload is the amount of the volume of blood that goes into the ventricles by the end of diastole, so the amount of blood that is ready to be pumped out by the ventricles, yeah? So if the amount of blood that comes in is adequate, so that the patient has hemorrhage, the amount of blood that comes in is adequate, but in spite of adequate volume of blood, the heart is unable to pump in order to meet the requirements of the bodies, the different organs. Yeah, you can have heart failure as a result of many types of heart diseases, problems with the valves, problems with the muscles, etc. Pretty much that's the end result. Once anything goes wrong with the heart, eventually the heart goes into heart failure. So, and then what does it mean for the body? We just say that it's the inability to meet the demands of the body. What do we mean by that? Well, the body, in order to work, imagine if I've just my leg, the muscles on my legs, if I need to catch the bus, I need to run. What my muscles need is oxygen. They need to be able to get rid of the CO2, and they need to get some nutrients on these. And that has to be, I have to be able to supply what my muscles need if I'm waiting for the bus, but also when I run to the bus, yeah? So this is what we mean by, meeting the demands. What happens if the heart is unable to pump enough blood forward, yeah, is that you start having blood accumulating backwards. So this is what we say congestion, yeah? Now, the more physiological terms for that is that what happens is inside the vessels, you remember I might have been introduced into the osmotic pressure, the hydrostatic pressures. So what happens is the hydrostatic pressures go high, and then as a result of that, you have congestion of the vessels. You have far too much volume there. Also, if the heart is unable to move the blood forward, it's accumulating blood also in the heart, so the filling pressures of the heart become higher. If you're a vessel, if you're a pulmonary vein and you just want to bring blood to the left atrium, it is harder for you as a vessel to bring the blood into a left atrium that is already dilated and is far too much blood inside. Yeah? So this is what I mean by congestion. And then as a result of the congestion, you get edema. So again, imagine you're a vessel. And your hydrostatic pressures are starting to go higher and higher and higher. As a vessel, you have lots of pores, little holes, and then what happens is you start leaking out all this fluid, and then this fluid goes to the next to you. What is it next to you? The interstitium. And if you're a vessel inside the lung, after the interstitium, the fluid will move into the alveoli, and then you're going to have pulmonary edema. Yeah? So this is edema. Yeah? The lymphatic vessels are there too. In case you're a vessel and you're a bit leaky, you do have lymphatic vessels in the tissues that are able to pump this fluid back and put it back into the circulation. But with high hydrostatic pressures, even the lymphatics cannot cope, and you do end up with capillary effusions, edema. So, what does it mean as clinical signs? That might mean signs of backward failure and forward failure. So I'm going now to start introducing concepts or different vocabulary about the heart failure. So backward failure, it means that the heart or the blood is accumulating backward, so you are getting congestion and edema. And forward failure, it means that there is not enough blood pumped out. There is not enough cardiac output. And one thing and the other probably go hand by hand. Sometimes you might see more signs related to backward failure, more pure congestion. Sometimes you might see more signs of forward failure, more lack of cardiac output, or sometimes you see a combination of the two. Yeah, so this is backward failure and forward failure. I will repeat that, backward and forward failure concept. But you also can, or you might have heard about acute heart failure versus chronic heart failure. And what we mean here is not that we're just making up classifications, is that we're talking more about the timing. In an acute heart failure, you have a patient that it was okay until now, and then suddenly is showing signs of congestive heart failure. It's an acute, sudden onset of clinical signs. Whereas in a chronic state, it's something was wrong with the heart, example, a leaky valve. The leaky valve has been leaking for years. The heart and the body put in place some compensatory mechanism mechanisms that kind of made the body cope with the leak for some time. As a consequence of these compensatory mechanisms, the heart became more enlarged and enlarged and enlarged and enlarged until there is something, for example, having to run for the bus again, that might push the heart over the edge, and that might actually show signs of congestive heart failure. And then it might be that you can give some medication to the patient, goes back into a more stable status, but then eventually deteriorates again. So it's just be able to differentiate these two different presentations. Someone that is dealing with acute congestive heart failure and someone who's dealing with a more chronic form of the disease. Yeah. So far I've talked about backward failure, about forward failure, about acute versus chronic congestive heart failure. I'm now going to divide more based again on the clinical presentation into right-sided heart failure and left-sided heart failure. Now, this is really, really useful, and we do use all this terminology all the time. Again, the reason I put it in here is because if you were able to understand and follow the anatomy, the physiology, what pumps where, this makes so much sense. So in the left-sided heart failure, there is something wrong with the left side of the heart, surprise, surprise. On the left side, we say we have pulmonary veins going into the pulmonary veins come from the lungs, come into the left atrium, then there is the left ventricle, and then there is the aorta. So something is wrong in this circuit. If something is wrong in this circuit, for example, I'm just going to make the most common example, a leak on the mitral valve because of myxomatous mitral valve disease, degeneration of the valve, mitral endocarditis, it's got many names. So if you can imagine what happens in there is there is a leak on the mitral valve. So rather than the blood moving forward all the time from the left atrium to the left ventricle to the aorta, the blood is like, I'm about to be pumped, but I leak back. I'm about to be pumped, but I leak back. So you have some regurgitation, some leaking into the left atrium. So this left atrium is like, oh, there goes the blood again. I'll pump it, there goes the blood again. So eventually it dilates. If I make it animated, you might remember it better. So what happens is, it reaches a point in which the left atrium is far too big and it just can't cope. The filling pressures are too high. The pulmonary veins increase the hydrostatic pressures. Fluid starts leaking out to the interstitium, then to the alveoli of the lungs. So what is this animal going to show? Problems with the breathing difficulties. Yeah, it's all very logical. So respiratory distress, dyspnea,